Deep beneath the sprawling canopy of an ancient forest, where the trees grew so tall they seemed to press the sky backward, the world moved according to a rhythm that was neither hurried nor gentle, but steady, like the slow pulse of something remembering its own history. Every root, every fallen branch, every curling fern had its place in the quiet memory of the woodland. Nothing here was forgotten. Nothing here existed without purpose. And hiding among the undergrowth, half shadowed and half covered in dry leaves, lived a creature that the forest respected with a silent distance. The porcupine moved with a patience that defied the dangers that surrounded it. Its body was low, its limbs small, but the forest understood, size was not protection here, intention was. Other animals moved quickly to avoid predators or sought strength within their herds. The porcupine relied on something different, something the forest never ignored, the quiet warning carried in the quills along its back. Still, the quills were not weapons used thoughtlessly. They were the final measure, the last barrier between danger and safety, reserved only for moments when retreat no longer mattered. The forest was shifting that season. Dry leaves layered the ground in brittle stacks, snapping under careless feet. Wind slid between the trunks, thin and cold, carrying scents from far-off valleys, scents of hunger, wandering predators, and restless creatures searching for food before winter's grip tightened. Nights grew longer, shadows stretched further, and silence seemed to weigh heavier on the branches. In this uncertain atmosphere, the porcupine moved in careful arcs, following familiar paths while listening for the faintest difference in the forest's breath. It knew the difference between harmless rustling and the purposeful movement of something watching from behind a log or beneath a root shadow. It knew when the forest was awake with natural noise and when the stillness was unnatural, when a predator held its breath and paused too long. Every hair along its back felt the world as much as its ears did. Its quills were not mere spikes, they were sensors, antennae of instinct, whispering to the porcupine long before danger reached its skin. One evening, as dusk seeped through the canopy in a slow descent, the porcupine sensed a disturbance. It was subtle, like a faint tremor through the soil, a vibration that didn't match the usual shifting of leaves or settling of twigs. Something in the air tightened. The porcupine froze, its body low and still, every part of it listening. The forest held its breath with it. The light faded fully, and darkness thickened into something tangible. The porcupine waited. When movement came, it was too distant to be a threat but too intentional to ignore. A soft pad of feet, slow, deliberate, circling a wide perimeter. The sound appeared briefly, disappeared, then resurfaced closer. The forest's smaller creatures reacted first. Crickets fell silent, beetles paused mid-scuttle, small birds tucked deeper into foliage. Something large was moving. Something that did not rush, something confident enough to take its time. The porcupine did not run. It rarely did. Instead, it shifted to a nearby hollow formed between two old roots, allowing shadows to deepen around it. Patience mattered more than speed here. If the creature wandering the woods sought easy prey, it would move on. If it sought challenge, the forest would test both hunter and hunted in ways that often surprised the one who initiated the pursuit. Night grew deeper. Stars hid behind heavy branches. The moon was a thin slice barely touching the sky. The porcupine curled slightly, not in fear, but in readiness. It knew the forest well. It knew how creatures behaved when hunger whispered into their bones. It knew that some dangers could be frightened away with the smallest rattle of quills, while others only grew more interested. Eventually, the wandering presence moved closer, brushing through ferns with a steady confidence. It stopped just beyond the edge of the clearing, hidden behind a tangle of shadows. The porcupine heard the soft exhale of breath from the creature, slow, steady, thoughtful. This was not something panicked. This was not something inexperienced. The porcupine had encountered predators before, but this one seemed to move with an intelligence the night rarely carried. The predator did not lunge. It waited. The porcupine did not move. It breathed slowly, deeply, sensing, calculating. Silence settled like mist around them. A small moth fluttered overhead, unaware of the silent struggle happening below. An owl shifted somewhere in the trees, but the predator did not startle. It was focused entirely on the porcupine. Minutes stretched. The porcupine's quills vibrated with tiny tremors, sending information along its spine, information that felt disquieting. Something in the predator's posture suggested caution, as though it was studying the porcupine instead of preparing to attack. The forest rarely saw such thoughtful stillness before a hunt. This was curiosity mixed with hunger, observation layered over instinct. The porcupine understood the danger immediately, a predator that learned was far more dangerous than one that acted blindly. The porcupine slowly angled its body so the quills faced outward, tipping slightly in a defensive arc. The slightest motion caused a faint shimmer of sound, the delicate clicking of hollow quills brushing together. It was not loud. It did not need to be. The forest understood that sound as clearly as a roar. The predator shifted, weight adjusting. Not backing away. Not advancing. Still deciding. Hours passed. The cold deepened. Dew formed on leaves, glistening faintly in what little light filtered from the thin moon. The porcupine remained in place, refusing to loosen its guard. The predator moved at last, quietly circling, testing different angles. The porcupine rotated its body each time, always positioning the quills between itself and danger. It was a slow dance of patience, one the forest watched with tense silence. Then, just when the night seemed ready to break into dawn, the predator slipped back into the darkness, vanishing with a whisper of movement so soft it was almost imagined. The porcupine waited long after it left, knowing that predators sometimes returned when prey dared to relax. The forest slowly revived its sounds, crickets chirped tentatively, small creatures resumed their rustling, the wind exhaled softly. The porcupine finally moved from its guarded position, but not far. Its instincts still hummed with warning. A predator that watched so long would not give up its curiosity easily. The following nights grew stranger. The predator returned, slipping through the trees like a shadow with thought behind it. Always watching. Always waiting. Never attacking. The porcupine sensed something shifting in its behavior, an unsettling persistence, a hunger not driven solely by the stomach. The predator wanted to understand the porcupine, understand the quills, understand what made this small creature so unapproachable. It was learning, adjusting, thinking of possibilities. The porcupine became more cautious, altering its travel routes, finding new hollows, staying closer to thorny bushes and fallen logs where its back could press safely. It slept lighter. It listened harder. Yet even with all its experience, it knew that the predator was adapting faster than the forest could warn it. On the fifth night, something shifted in the world around them. A storm rolled in quietly, bringing with it a damp heaviness that muffled sound. Thunder grumbled far in the distance, and the smell of rain flickered through the canopy. The porcupine sensed the change immediately. Storms altered the forest's balance, confusing scents, hiding sounds, creating places where movement could be masked. Predators took advantage of such moments. The porcupine moved toward a rocky outcrop it had used before, a narrow crevice offering safety for its back and only a small entrance to defend. But halfway there, it felt a presence ahead. The predator was waiting, not approaching from behind this time, but cutting off its path, predicting its movement. The forest trembled with tension. The porcupine slowed, scanning the area. The predator stepped into faint moonlight, revealing only the outline of its form, tall, sinewy, eyes gleaming like wet stone. It did not growl. It simply watched, breathing slowly, as if calculating all possible outcomes. The porcupine knew it could not outrun the creature. It knew it could not outfight it. What it could do, what it was made to do, was survive by turning its vulnerability into something untouchable. The predator took a step forward. The porcupine backed toward a fallen log, placing its quills outward. Every needle lifted slightly, ready, not for attack, but for refusal. The predator lunged. The porcupine moved with a precision born of survival, twisting just enough for the predator's face to meet a wall of quills. A sharp cry tore through the night, not from victory, but from shock. The predator stumbled back, quills embedded deep, pain rippling through its body in waves. Blood dotted the leaves. The forest watched silently. The porcupine remained perfectly still, breathing heavily, waiting to see if the predator had learned enough to retreat. The creature shook with pain, eyes burning with a mix of anger and realization. It understood now. Approaching from the front meant suffering. Attacking carelessly meant losing. But something in its gaze chilled the porcupine. It wasn't fear. It was a decision. A new strategy forming behind those gleaming eyes. It backed into the shadows. It didn't run. It disappeared with a terrifying calm, leaving behind droplets of blood and a quiet message that felt heavier than footsteps. The predator would return. It would return differently. And when it did, it would not make the same mistake. The porcupine felt the forest's stillness tighten around it, as though even the trees sensed what that meant. It understood what the predator had learned, and more importantly, what it would try next. This was not over. Not even close. And somewhere in the darkness, where the shadows thickened into something almost alive, a pair of glowing eyes opened again, watching, waiting, thinking. The forest was no longer safe. Not for anything that bled. Not for anything with quills. And night by night, the predator's curiosity would grow into something far more dangerous than hunger. Far more patient. Far more determined. It had learned the porcupine's strength. Now it wanted to learn its weakness. And deep in the forest, where even the wind refused to breathe too loudly, the porcupine realized that protecting what mattered was no longer about fear, it was about endurance. Because some dangers did not disappear. They evolved. And this one had just begun.